On the streets, some Iraqi soldiers have taken up positions. The Iraqis are said to have more formidable units. They're well hidden. In Britain this evening, B-52 bombers were being armed at RAF Fairford. Most of these aircraft are older than the pilots who fly them, but they're capable of enormous destruction. Tonight in Baghdad, they're bracing themselves for more. Iraqi radio says one of Saddam's family homes has been hit. It says no one was hurt. It will be a long night, a long week. Jeremy Bowen, BBC News.
The sound of Iraqi anti-aircraft guns were broken by the huge explosions of incoming missiles and bombs. Buildings half a mile away shook as a series of government buildings were hit. The former office of Iraq's Deputy Prime Minister Tariq Aziz was ripped apart by a series of blasts. A huge plume of smoke hung over what remained of the building, which was left in flames. This was a very different affair from the first night's bombardment.
British troops found themselves under fire today, even before crossing over into Iraq. They took cover in foxholes in the desert as the Iraqis fired a barrage of ballistic missiles at them.
The missile that was incoming has been shot down.
The priority of the day was to shoot the incoming Scuds out of the sky because no one could be certain if they were armed with lethal chemical or biological warheads.
The type of warhead is unknown.
Downwind of those three explosions. My estimation is that there is a downwind hazard.
This evening, British troops at their field headquarters here, close to the Iraqi border, have been busy digging fresh trenches and bunkers. Saddam Hussein is already putting up a fight, and so, it seems, are plenty of his soldiers. Well, what British and American commanders are hoping tonight is that as their ground forces push forward, they will drive Iraqi troops further back so that they won't be able to launch any more of these Scud attacks. But I have to tell you, in the last few minutes, there has been another Scud alert. We've had to go down to the shelter yet again, so it doesn't seem that for the moment the Scud attacks are over. Here, after yet another Scud alert, somebody shouted out gas, 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 and we all had to run off yet again. So the Scuds still seem to be being fired, or at least we're still getting Scud alerts. Now, the Americans and British are trying to prevent that by their advance, which is aimed at pushing back the Iraqis from the border as quickly as possible. We know that the British Royal Horse Artillery have crossed over. We also know that 3 Commando Brigade, Royal Marine Commandos, have gone into the Al Khor Peninsula, launched a big operation to take that port area, a big strategic port, which is crucial, say the British and the Americans, for getting humanitarian aid into Iraq after the war is over.
They're at war, a premier facing opposition both at home and abroad. A leader bound for Brussels this afternoon with his foreign secretary. Mr. Blair was careful to record his televised address on his own turf, inside Downing Street's White Room, before leaving for the European Union summit. His message was unequivocal.
On Tuesday night, I gave the order for British forces to take part in military action in Iraq. Tonight, British servicemen and women are engaged from air, land and sea. Their mission? To remove Saddam Hussein from power and disarm Iraq of its weapons of mass destruction. I know this course of action has produced deep divisions of opinion in our country. But I know also the British people will now be united in sending our armed forces our thoughts and prayers. Our choice is clear. Back down and leave Saddam hugely strengthened, or proceed to disarm him by force. Retreat might give us a moment of respite, but years of repentance at our weakness would, I believe...
Just waiting for the order, one assumes. Yes, that's right. I was talking to a US Air Force major here just a few hours ago, just outside the base, and he was saying morale inside is very high, they're ready to go, but he was certainly giving me no indication of when that would happen. And as we can see now, if we take a bit of a closer look, it's all pretty quiet around the planes at the moment, 14 of them lined up on the runway and pretty much ready to go. We think that there is quite a lot of weaponry loaded on board already, but although we can't see much happening now, there has been a lot of security around this airbase today. Helicopters flying overhead, a lot of police, some of them armed, patrolling around the outskirts of the airbase, and the whole airbase is surrounded by razor wire, so enormously heightened security. And there is a real sense of anticipation that if nothing is going to happen tonight, it certainly will happen in the next few hours or in the next few days.
Cruise missiles launched from ships in the Gulf as the war began in earnest. British submarines joined the assault. This photograph shows a Tomahawk bursting from the sea. They landed on targets in central Baghdad. Key government buildings in the city are in flames. One of Saddam Hussein's palaces is reported to have been hit. This has been a long night for the people of Iraq's capital. As the aerial bombardment continued, the land offensive got underway.
Jeez.
Artillery in the Kuwaiti desert opened up with howitzers on Iraqi troop positions. No fire was returned. Almost at once, tanks began to roll across the border between Kuwait and Iraq. British and American units moved into the south of the country and took the town of Qasr. ITV News' Philip Ray-Smith was with them.
I am travelling with British forces, and literally within the last few minutes we have crossed from Kuwait into Iraq. We are now in hostile territory. And I'm travelling, as I say, with British forces, the 7th Parachute Regiment Royal Horse Artillery. Their lightweight guns were requested by the US Marines to provide fire cover, and of course the US Marines were always going to be at the forefront of this operation. We are, we think, the first British troops to cross this border.
Tonight, fighter jets continue to streak into the sky from the deck of the USS Constellation out in the Persian Gulf. British Harriers are taking off from air bases on combat missions over Iraq, hunting down Scud missiles. Meanwhile, Royal Marines launched an amphibious assault on the coast.
Up to 10,000 troops are said to be involved. During the day, Iraq struck back by firing around 10 missiles into Kuwait. There are no reports of any Allied injuries. A Pentagon official told the BBC that the latest action was intended to prepare the battlefield. And Harriers have flown operations throughout Thursday and are continuing to do so into Friday. Some of the sorties have been in support of those ground troops crossing over into Iraq. It's believed that a significant number of Harriers have been involved in the strikes and that their task is to hunt down the mobile launchers that may have been involved in the attacks in northern Kuwait.
Like a high explosive, and it appears that in the direction that I saw those puffs of smoke a few seconds ago, within the past 30 seconds, I can see an M1A1 Abrams going out. So far, no, it wasn't that tank. I'm sure it wasn't that tank firing. I would have seen that. So an M1A1 Abrams is going out to investigate what is on the horizon, what would be to the east of us at this point. Now we can see another Bradley fighting vehicle. If I can ask Charlie Miller, my cameraman, to swing a little left. Charlie, do you have that, Bradley? He, too, is following the M1 Abrams out. This is the purpose of a cavalry unit. When they encounter enemy contact or when they encounter contact with hostile forces, what they do is dash forward, try to engage those forces, probe their strength. The cavalry is essentially on a reconnaissance mission, again, paving the way for the 3rd Mechanized Infantry Division, 3rd Division, which is far behind us at this point, but will be the real 1-2 punch when it comes to taking on Saddam Hussein's Republican Guard divisions like the Medina Division and the Hammurabi Division closer to Baghdad. Larry?
So, as a tactic, it doesn't bear any fruit for Saddam.
But if they are indeed blowing up the oil wells, it does bring a sense of urgency to the fact that the troops really do need to get in there and take command of that city fairly quickly.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm quite surprised, actually, that we haven't seen more of an effort to seize oil wells by small mobile airborne forces. Or maybe we have, and we just haven't got the reporting access to it.
OK, well, we're going back now straight.
Indeed, getting these pictures, it's quite amazing to think of the technology which is being used to get these live pictures to us. I'm just curious, how long has it been since you and the 7th Cavalry encountered any significant resistance from the Iraqis? How many hours?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? There's a lot of armor rolling around me. Just a little more slowly and a little louder, please, John.
Sure. How many hours has it been, Walt, since you encountered any significant Iraqi opposition?
Well, there has been no significant Iraqi opposition or hostile forces, and the reason we say that is because this is such an overwhelmingly lethal armored force moving across the desert. But it's been less than 20 minutes since we took rounds off our eastern flank to the rear. We can tell that because the sun is coming up here in the desert. As I say, I saw 1 or 2 rounds fall, explode, and then suddenly some main battle tanks and Bradley fighting vehicles went chasing off after whatever it was that fired quickly. Now you can see us following the M1A1 Abrams ahead of us. I'm not sure you can see that orange tarp on the top of the turret. That orange top is called a VS-17, and it is to alert aircraft in the air, that is to say Allied air power, that this is indeed a friendly force moving through the desert. It has moved out very, very quickly, comparatively speaking, and is moving on its way to its objective. And that objective, of course, is ultimately the Iraqi Republican Guard unit south of Baghdad. But the principal mission of this unit, and what you're seeing here, is you're seeing scout tanks out scouting, Bradley fighting vehicles out scouting, combing the Iraqi desert, clearing the way for the much larger division which will follow. That's a Bradley armored fighting vehicle there. It is one of the scouts which was detached a short while ago to look for the whoever it was that was firing on us. That's a 25mm gun there, and it has a 5-man crew, although sometimes they go with 4 men. That's the commander in the turret there. His rank is usually staff sergeant, and you can see he's rolling along probably 30 miles an hour. That is one of the scout vehicles ahead of the tanks as a rule, and they scramble quickly to engage any hostile forces when they're fired upon, as has been the case for the 2nd time in a row this evening. John?
Just yesterday, and now they're in this assembly area. They're in a posture, should they get the word to move into Iraq. What you see behind me, if I can show you a little bit, is where they slept last night. These are sleeping holes, if you will, basically defensive positions so that if there's any kind of incoming fire, they're prepared. Also, hopefully you can see some of the 5-ton trucks that the soldiers are using. Each one of these 5-ton trucks is supposed to hold 18 soldiers, so 2 squads of soldiers. So pretty crowded, a lot of thought being given to where to put everything and still have enough room for the actual soldiers. We had a pretty long road out here, John. Remember, we were speaking about that yesterday. Yesterday began with a wake-up call, if you will. 3 Scud alarms just about midday. I was standing next to a group of soldiers midday. The first Scud alarm went off. We put our gas mask on, went into a shelter. 5 minutes later, we were told that indeed there had been a surface-to-surface missile attack that had been intercepted by a Patriot missile. So things already obviously well underway here. On the way out here, also last night, heard some artillery pretty far off, I think somewhere maybe near the border, kind of a thumping sound, if you will. Couldn't see it, but the soldiers in the front of the convoy told me that they saw what looked like thunder and lightning coming from the direction of Basra. So obviously things heating up. The 101st, however, now in an assembly area, not in Iraq, in the Kuwaiti desert, waiting for word.
First casualties of the campaign, a U.S. Marine CH-46 helicopter, like the one you can see there right on your screen, has crashed in northern Kuwait, killing all 16 military personnel on board, 4 American servicemen and 12 British soldiers. U.S. investigators are looking into the cause of the crash. Those are the latest developments.
It's called Kalak. That's a village you can see behind me, just adjacent to the Great Zab River. Kalak, which is on the main road to Mosul, which is about 40 miles drive from here, about an hour plus. And it was in this area on the outskirts of Mosul that we saw overnight anti-aircraft fire together with the sound of distant explosions. Confirmation later in the day that there have been what appears the first attack on or around Iraqi troop concentrations in Mosul, the Mosul area, if not the city itself. Mosul, the second largest population center in Iraq. So really war activity on this northern front. Now, if we take a look with the live camera here, Kalak you can see there, and if we move up towards those hills just behind, we'll be able to pick up the Iraqi positions on the ridgeline there. Now, for the past several weeks that we've been monitoring this area, we've seen very little in terms of aggressive activity from the Iraqi troops up there. We've seen them really conducting their daily lives. Occasionally we've seen them with light weapons. Sometimes they've brought up a small piece of artillery, little more than an anti-tank weapon. Nothing heavy to see up there. But if we move along the ridgeline, you'll see the little lumps of their dug-in fortifications, flat roofs, and as we move further down the ridgeline, we can only guess at what the concentrations of the Iraqi army is behind there. Now, Kurdish military commanders on this side tell us that these Iraqi troops are little more than poorly fed, conscript members of the Iraqi army, and it's these people, once the pressure starts, once the US-led allied forces start really heavily attacking this area, that it's these areas that will possibly surrender first. Now, if we move down, this is one of the vital road bridges across the Great Zab River. This bridge was used to transfer food on the Oil for Food program into the Kurdish enclave. And at the bottom of that bridge, really two developments. One, an earth barricade that was put up there some 3 days ago by a front loader. And for the first time a couple of days ago, the abandonment of those positions, which were machine gun posts, the abandonment of those positions by the Iraqi army. It's also understood from the Kurdish military commanders on this side of the bridge that they believe the Iraqis have rigged explosives to detonate this bridge at an appropriate time, presumably when they believe the element of the shock and awe bombing campaign really reaches this part of Iraq in earnest. Now, of course, we've seen no presence of the American military on the ground here build up. We've seen no really evidence of that, but there is an expectation that the Turkish parliament, now that it's given the green light for there to be a deployment, or rather a use of US airspace, that at some stage we'll see US troops, elements of the 101st Armored Division coming into this area and really coordinating with the Kurdish military to have really some sort of military pressure being exercised from this side, and that could happen at any time soon.
I don't think any of us have ever seen anything like this, live, real-time pictures of an army moving forward in a battle zone. You're looking across what would appear to be at least a 10-mile plain, at least 5 miles in either direction, and those across that are stretched out Bradley fighting vehicles and, of course, the main battle tank, the Abrams. They have been going for probably 8 hours. The commanders in those tank turrets have been standing the whole time, as have been the loaders. Now, the loaders would drop down if indeed they were engaging in shell fire, but they have not been firing, although they have taken on 2 different occasions some incoming shells, sort of a fire and release thing from perhaps some renegade Iraqi units far beyond the horizon. That has not slowed the progress to any extent at all. One thing interesting, John, you might find that this forward motion by the 7th U.S. Cavalry was not supposed to proceed until midnight tonight local time. That is to say, probably more than 12 hours from now, 14, 15 hours from now. But what we're given to believe is that the Pentagon was so incensed, as were these individual soldiers in the field, so incensed that the Iraqis would fire tactical ballistic missiles out of Iraq and into Kuwait and in the direction of the U.S. soldiers, that a decision was made in the chain of command, I'm not sure at what level, but a decision was made in the chain of command all right, that's it. He isn't going to do this to us. And bam, they decided to go forward a full 24 hours in advance. Now, we can see these units moving out again. We paused briefly here. One of the reasons we paused was to give the helicopters, the reconnaissance helicopters, fresh fuel. One other footnote, if you'll allow me this, John. Each of these vehicles and the helicopters has the very same fuel. That is, the tank rides on JP8, Jet Petroleum Fuel 8. The helicopters have that. The Humvees have that. And it's just fascinating, the efficiency with which a modern army operates.
Soldiers, these are Iraqi soldiers moving through the northern part of Iraq. They're very close to the Kurdish border. This is Kurdistan, the self-governing territory of Kurdistan. We are seeing Iraqi soldiers there who do not appear to be equipped with very much, but just sort of roaming around that particular area of northern Iraq. There is very little or no Allied activity in this part of Iraq. There is possibly special force activity. We don't know what these soldiers are doing over there. They're very close to the Kurdish part of Iraq, northern Iraq, Kurdistan, which is a self-governing territory.
Why should we fight when we aren't paid properly? All we want is to end the injustice inflicted on us by the Iraqi government.
But it's not all going Washington's way. The alliance has suffered its first casualties. 12 Americans and 4 Britons killed when a helicopter like this one crashed in Kuwait. It has been slight. Saddam's once iron grip on his country is being prized free. Robert Parsons, BBC News.
Now, I know you can't talk about what the ongoing military campaign will be, but if I was to phrase the question something along the lines of, have the military objectives set for the first night been met? Could you say that you are where the Marine commanders hoped they would be?
Absolutely. As I said, there have been a number of POWs taken already. The bunker complexes that could have proved to be a bit of a problem have been dealt with. A lot of them still perhaps could cause some problems, but this particular part of the oil complex is secure. It is under the control of the Royal Marines 40 Commando. And as I say, there could still be a few problems beyond the fence, and that is something that these men are going to have to keep a good watch out for.
OK, Clive Murray, thanks very much indeed. We're going to stay in southern Iraq now, and on the phone we can speak to our correspondent Adam Minot. Adam, what's happening where you are?
Well, we crossed into southern Iraq about an hour ago, heading towards our objective, which, if the road had been clear, would have been maybe about an hour away. Now, just a few yards inside the border, we've come under what looks like fairly stiff resistance. I was in a column of about 15 vehicles, and the front of the column came under attack. The vehicle I was in with the US Marines was in the middle of this column, came under attack, we think, from small arms fire, and also possibly things called Saga missiles. These are wire-guided missiles capable of taking out a vehicle. There was a firefight for 10 or 15 minutes, and then more salvos coming in from Iraqi positions, at which point the British artillery behind me in northern Kuwait was called in, firing over our heads towards the Iraqi positions. And the vehicles that we were in, 5-ton truck, have now retreated back maybe 150, 200 yards, and I'm taking cover behind a sandbank. It looks relatively quiet at the moment, still smoke billowing away in the distance on what I think is about maybe half, 3/4 of a mile ahead of me.
These CH-46 choppers came down just over the Kuwaiti side of the border, killing all those on board. It's understood they were a combination of British and American soldiers. It's not yet known how the accident happened, but even away from hostile territory, the pilots fly in difficult desert conditions using night vision goggles, with the added complication of sudden unexpected events such as sandstorms. The Chinook helicopter is a workhorse of the military. Its main mission is to move troops, artillery and ammunition onto the battlefield quickly and efficiently. The large cabin can accommodate up to 45 fully equipped troops or 10 tons of cargo. It can carry vehicles and guns slung beneath the fuselage. The Chinook can be used by special forces. Its rear door lowers to become a ramp and troops can get out quickly. It has a crew of 2 pilots and up to 2 crewmen who can fire 2 large machine guns mounted on the side and rear of the aircraft. The helicopter has a proven history. It was first used in the Vietnam War and has been used in many combat situations since. But tragically, it's emerged this morning that over friendly territory, a crash in one of these helicopters has brought the first Allied casualties of Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Control Basra, then you've got a main supply route, a metal road, a tarmac road that can punch all the way towards Baghdad. Certainly the way they're operating is very, they're sort of bread and butter work. You know, it's launching off ship, that mass movement of troops to swamp the area and